Alrighty, how is everyone doing today? Welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel with an emphasis on great theories, concepts, and discoveries that you might not know about because they've been suppressed. Powers that be are trying to shield you from these realizations. And this is a segment we have called the Q-tip of the spear, where we look at the coverage of the cutting edge of the InfoWar. Various podcasters out there that I feel are on the cutting edge, and yeah, it's been kind of interesting. But again, I would say that I believe that this InfoWar is pretty much a wrap, and that the good guys are going to win. The bad guys are in big trouble, but the good guys have to move on to the next phase, which is the implementation phase. And this is where it's going to get dicey because the good guys are not really ready to implement anything uh, on this earth to anybody else. Their values and their belief systems, their heroes, their holidays, their philosophies um, are all contaminated with deep state ideologies because they haven't really examined them. They haven't given them a close examination to see whether they do stand the scrutiny that they've put under so much of the 20th and 21st century stuff about the deep state, you know, all the false flags and the um, hoaxes and the uh, psyops that have occurred over the 20th and 21st centuries. The Patriots have done a phenomenal job of reconstructing and deconstructing all of this stuff and making it relevant and putting it out there, getting it into circulation. But they've done an almost equally appallingly terrible job of doing that for their values and their um, belief systems, which have remained uh, pretty much untested. Um, I, I can't believe how often I see just virtue signaling over as soon as the word Jesus Christ is mentioned, as soon as the Bible is mentioned, you all just go right into deference mode. Like, oh well, oh, I'm supposed to give this deference. Oh well, I can't question this. Oh well, I've got to show respect for this. I've got to pretend like I believe this, or I have to, you know, I have to pretend like I believe it because I don't know whether I believe it or not because I haven't looked into it well enough. Um, Most of these people are Christians by default, meaning that they're Christians according to their upbringing, and they recognize that there's something valuable in the scriptures, but they haven't really spent the time to really study it. They've read it, they know a lot of the verses. They can cite certain verses for certain instances. They might know a handful of the stories, but they haven't looked into it enough to recognize how vulnerable it is to attack. Because there isn't any evidence for any of the stuff that's in the New Testament. Um, the only evidence for the existence of Jesus is in the New Testament and in uh, some of the other scriptures, the apocryphal works, and so on. And those aren't that's not evidence. It's all after the fact recollections that could very easily just be fictions. And you can show that they are fictions, but there's nothing, no primary sources, no even corroborating sources of things outside of the scriptures other than Josephus, Suetonius, uh, Trajan, Pliny the Younger, and Tacitus, five Roman royals, or, you know, members of the royal court, of the imperial court of the Romans. That should give you the hint that the New Testament was written by the Romans. We talk about in the United States, in the 20th century, we talk about the Manhattan Project. Like this was this huge nuclear weapons project that all of the scientists corroborated or collaborated on. And, they put so many resources into it for years and years and years. And they ended up, producing atomic weapons and using it on Japan twice, theoretically, if you believe any of that. Um, which I don't know that I do. But the Romans' equivalent of the Manhattan Project was Christianity. All of those aforementioned intellectuals, as well as many other intellectuals such as Seneca the Younger, Lucan, um, they all were involved in the creation of Christianity, um, which was cobbled together from all kinds of pagan myths. Um, every last story that is in the New Testament, all the stories about Jesus, they're all from, you can trace the derivation of every one of the stories. It goes back to one or another of pagan myths. A lot of them to ancient India, the myth of Krishna, but many others to other myths, to Persian, um, Zoroastrianism, uh, also pagan mystery schools, the Greeks and the Romans, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Chinese, the Japanese, and even the Pygmies. There are origins of much older than the Bible, much older than the New Testament, that the Romans used to cobble together the story of Jesus. And then, in addition to that, they used their own history, written by Josephus, of the history of the war between the Romans and the Jews. That was the whole reason why the uh, Romans created the New Testament in the first place, was as a psychological operation against the Jews, to mellow them out, because they had been just constantly revolting and uprising against the Romans, culminating in this war that just Josephus describes. And in this war, he describes the exploits of the military general Titus, who eventually becomes one of the new emperors. And Titus has a campaign in Judea where he goes from place to place, fighting battle after battle and having adventure after adventure. And those events described by Josephus are a 100% parallel of the events of Jesus's ministry. in Judea at all of the same places. Every place that Titus goes in Josephus during the war in Judea, Jesus goes in the Gospels, in the book of Luke. And they go to these different places in the same order. At each place, the adventures are parallel, where Titus usually encounters the event literally. Jesus encounters the event symbolically. And each event is spaced out by exactly 40 years because the story of Jesus was written in the 70s, 80s, and 90s AD, but was backdated to the 20s and 30s AD. And the war is described, occurred, Titus's military campaign was from 70 to 73 AD. So that's just one of many codes, satires, parallels, parables, you name it, that transfers from Josephus over to the New Testament. We know who wrote well, we don't know who wrote Josephus, but we know that it was issued by the Romans. Josephus lived at Caesar's palace in a townhouse, and he was an adopted member of the Flavian dynasty of Caesars, which included Emperor Titus, as well as his father, Emperor Vespasian, and Titus's younger brother, Emperor Domitian, from 69 to 96 AD. My recommendation, if you haven't heard about any of this, is to check out the work of Joseph Atwill, Caesar's Messiah, the Flavian Signature Edition, also Michael Menescot's, his book called Christianity's Origin as a Flavian Secrecy Cult, and just read the work of Josephus and compare for yourself. Compare Josephus starting in, I believe, the end of book 3, beginning of book 4 of his 7-volume War of the Jews, when Titus starts his military campaign, and go through Titus's military campaign stop by stop by stop, location by location, and compare it with the locations of Jesus in the Gospels. And you will see that you are being mocked by the New Testament, because that's what they wrote it for. They wrote it in order to mellow out the Jews, but they also wrote it in order to mock, deride, and humiliate the Jews, just like they did in this war between the Romans and the Jews. Okay, you can also check out my videos under the Bible Decode series for more information. But you don't have to believe me, you can prove it to yourself. But regardless, you should never just give something deference the way that the Patriot movement has given deference to Christianity and Jesus Christ. Nothing is above scrutiny, and nothing is above truth. Like, share, subscribe, comment, contribute, and share. And come back tomorrow for another episode of the Q-Tip of the Spear. Thanks for tuning in today, and have a great day.